Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right in today because we have a truly fascinating and honestly pretty bizarre historical story to unpack. We're traveling back in time to look at an absolutely wild premise, the marriage of a well. Yes, you heard that right. We'll be looking at how a literal hole in the ground filled with water was supposedly getting married and how the legendary razor-sharp wit of a man named Tenali Rama actually saved the day.
So have you ever heard of a well getting married? I mean, it sounds completely absurd, doesn't it? But here's the thing. This wasn't just some random thought experiment. This was the basis of a massive royal prank played by King Krishnadevaraya on his own subjects. You see, the king had recently commissioned and built this brand new well. And well, to have a little fun with his people, he decided to test his kingdom with an impossible scenario. Just imagine standing in your town square and hearing this exact decree proclaimed with absolute royal authority. Our new well is getting married. Every village's well must attend the wedding in the capital. If a village does not send its well, they will have to pay a fine. The king literally commanded that every single well in the entire kingdom physically travel to the capital city to attend the wedding of his new royal well. It was an absolutely impossible demand placed on the entire kingdom, cleverly disguised as a royal invitation. Now, for the villagers hearing this decree, it wasn't a joke at all. This was a fast-approaching crisis. The penalty for not showing up? Paying a heavy fine. If they failed this impossible task, they faced severe financial ruin. The stakes were incredibly high here. They were essentially being trapped by their own ruler into paying an exorbitant penalty for something they had absolutely zero physical control over. Put yourself in the shoes of those everyday villagers for just a second. The sheer panic sets in as you ask one fundamental question. How can a well possibly walk? It's a deep hole in the ground, lined with heavy stone and filled with water. It completely defies all laws of physics and nature. They were absolutely terrified because the logical impossibility of the king's demand meant they were doomed to pay that heavy fine. There seemed to be no rational way out of this royal trap.
But, as with all great historical tales from this era, right when the situation seems its most dire, enter the wise Tenali Rama. This legendary thinker, known far and wide for his incredibly sharp intellect, steps into our story. When news of the king's bizarre decree and the kingdom-wide panic reached him, Tenali Rama sought out one of the deeply terrified village headmen. And instead of joining in the panic, Tenali just calmly looked at him and simply said, "Don't worry." He already had a plan.
Okay, let's dive into this master plan, because I absolutely love how structured and counterintuitive this is. Step 1. Take a group of people and travel directly to the capital city. Step 2. Present yourself to the king and confidently tell him that your village's well is waiting just outside the city gates. And finally, Step 3. The real tactical genius. Ask the king to send his royal well out to welcome theirs. Notice what he's doing here. Instead of trying to argue that wells can't walk, Tenali decides to play completely into the king's absurd rules.
So, following Tenali's instructions perfectly, the village headman travels to the court, stands before the mighty King Krishnadevaraya, and with this cool, completely collected demeanor says, "Maharaj, our village's well is waiting for you outside the capital. Now you please send your well to welcome it." Seriously, imagine the sheer silence in the grand royal court at that very moment. The headman didn't beg for mercy, he didn't complain about the fine, he simply delivered the message exactly as Tenali Rama had instructed, setting the trap.
And this brilliantly illustrates the whole strategy. On one hand, we have the king's original logic. If your well doesn't physically travel here, you pay a fine. That inherently assumes a well can walk, right? On the other hand, we have Tenali Rama's brilliant counter-logic. Our well walked all the way here, but custom dictates the host well must walk out to welcome it. Tenali perfectly mirrored the king's absurd logical fallacy to defeat it. He essentially trapped the king inside the geometry of his own joke.
Which brings us to the climax of today's explainer. The king's realization. King Krishnadevaraya was a highly intelligent man himself, and the very moment he heard the headman's request, the genius of the trap just snapped into place for him. Instead of getting angry at the insubordination, he burst into loud, hearty laughter. He instantly recognized the trademark razor-sharp wit of Tenali Rama behind those words. Nobody else in the entire kingdom could have crafted such a perfect, looping counter-argument.
Still chuckling at the absolute brilliance of it all, the king replied, "If a well cannot walk to come here, then our well cannot go to welcome it either." With those words, the king gracefully admitted defeat to the clever logic. By acknowledging that his own newly built well couldn't walk to the city gates to act as a host, he was simultaneously forced to admit that the villager's well couldn't have walked to the capital in the first place. The logical loop was flawlessly closed.
The aftermath of this brilliant courtroom exchange was absolute perfection. First off, the king's hearty laughter breaks the tension entirely. But most importantly for the common people, the impossible joke decree is completely withdrawn, freeing every single villager across the kingdom from the terrifying threat of that heavy fine. And finally, Tenali Rama is highly honored by the king for his immense cleverness. Think about that. A single, perfectly constructed argument saved an entire kingdom from a massive, unfair penalty.
So, the crucial point we should all take away from this is this. A smartly delivered answer can solve even the most difficult, strange situations. When you are faced with a problem that seems utterly impossible or terrifying, like a walking well, panicking just doesn't help. What the story of Tenali Rama teaches us is the universal power of presence of mind. By shifting the frame of the problem and actually using the opponent's own logic against them, you can untangle even the most bizarre and stressful knots.
Which leaves us with one final thought to ponder as we wrap up today's explainer. How will you cleverly solve your next impossible problem? The next time you find yourself facing what feels like a ridiculous demand at work, or just a bizarre situation in your personal life, don't just react with panic. Take a step back, try to think like Tenali Rama, and see if there's a way to reframe the situation entirely. Because sometimes the absolute smartest way out of a trap is simply holding up a mirror. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this incredible piece of history, and I'll see you in the next one. Keep questioning the logic around you.